Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. And hold on a minute. I got to flip my mindset from March Madness to mad at the Colts.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and I am tired of these Chiefs defensive linemen. Chris Ballard, please stop signing them.
Hi, I'm Alan Pinkett. And Anthony Richardson to the Packers?
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Happy Tuesday and welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, longtime Indy sports talker and columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. I'm joined by a Notre Dame legend and longtime NFL running back, mostly with the Houston Oilers, along with some other teams, our friend Alan Pinkett. And Zach Hicks is here as well, your favorite resident film nerd on Locked On Colts, your first listen every day. Jake Arthur has a full house. He's got some fatherly duties to attend to. Benny and Benny and the Jets, the rest of the team there in the Arthur household. He'll be back with us later this week. It's been a slow drip, really, over the last few days, even though the Colts kind of had a busy day today with some low-level signings as they continue to add bodies, but potentially not starters and certainly not difference makers, which has led us to ask the question, which we'll lead off the show with today, are the Colts worse than where they were when they entered the offseason? And, of course, in segment number 2, we'll talk about what Indy still needs to do because, look, it's St. Patrick's Day, right? It's March 17th. It's not August 17th. So the Colts have a lot of time here. They've got a full draft class, yada, 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 all of that to bring to. So certainly we're not hitting the panic button yet, but there are clear areas of need, including one position group that I'm not an expert on all 32 NFL teams, but I have to imagine is currently the worst position group in the entire NFL right now, and that's linebacker for the Colts. We'll have the update on the Anthony Richardson trade market. Alan making a comment about that. We're one of his former teams in the Green Bay Packers. We saw another quarterback deal earlier this week, a couple of days ago, which may or may not have been around the ballpark of what could expect for Anthony Richardson right now. But I know there's been some discussion about the Colts maybe holding that trade piece for a while and seeing if that market gets better. And then finally, in segment 4, we'll talk about the Colts moves today, including Cam Taylor-Britt from the Bengals, a Lou Anarumo alum, Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame, Alan Pinkett's alma mater, and then another dude from Notre Dame. It was an all Notre Dame day today for the Colts. Carson Tout, a former Hooper who's on the Mo Alley Cox blueprint. We'll see how that works out for him, and we'll talk about that to wrap up the show today. But let's start with that, Zach. I mean, I'll just kind of come out and say I have the list here of who's staying, who's coming, and who's going. Have the Colts, are they worse right now than they were 2 weeks ago?
I mean, probably as of right now, technically, like on paper, I would say they are worse than what they were last season, but there's still a lot of time left in the offseason. I kind of did a show earlier today, if you guys haven't checked it out, on the regular show, the 30-minute show, where I talked about how the Colts are kind of slow playing a lot of this because as of right now, they're projected to get a 4th and a 6th comp pick for next offseason because of the Kwity Paye contract and the Nick Cross contract. So unless you're getting a player like a Trey Hendrickson, right, which they were desperately trying to get, you're fine with losing the 4th round pick for a Trey Hendrickson. But are you fine with losing that 4th round pick for an AJ Epinesa who's maybe on par with Kwity Paye at best, or Jadeveon Clowney who is, he's fine, he's a good player, but is it worth losing that 4th round pick for that? So the Colts are kind of doing like managed aggression this offseason, right? They've been aggressive with re-signing their 2 big guys. They've tried to make some moves here and there, but for the most part, it's been kind of managing that aggression to make sure that they are still good for the future as well. So I do think we are seeing a little bit of this stagnation with the Colts because of that. But there are still avenues for them to upgrade this team, from signing players who have been released to trying to be active on the trade market. So there is still time for that. There's still the draft coming as well. So I think, sure, we can look at this as of like 2 weeks ago and say, hey, this Colts team is minus Michael Pittman Jr., they're minus Braden Smith, they're minus Nick Cross, minus like all these players who were productive players for them. But ultimately, to me, I don't think they're like significantly worse. Like the linebacker room looks brutal right now. Don't get me wrong. The linebacker room looks awful. It's not going to be this come the regular season. They're going to make some moves at linebacker. And I will gladly, the saying goes, eat my hat if that doesn't happen. I'm not going to actually eat my hat. It's my one good hat. But the saying goes like, I'll eat my hat if that happens, because there's no way you're going into the season with Austin Ajike as your starting linebacker, right? So they're going to make moves there. And I think by the time the season starts, this could be like around the same level of roster, if not potentially better, or at least younger and faster, like they've been saying, when you add the draft in here with the defense. So yeah, it looks rough right now. They're like roughly like $30 million in cap space to still work with. They're going to make some more moves, so I'm not going to freak out about it right now. Although, again, the linebacker room currently is certainly concerning, but we're week 2 in a free agency. So they might not get the big upgrade like we all wanted and hoped. They took their swing at Trey Hendrickson, and the Ravens did their weird thing to land him instead. But ultimately, I think there's still plenty of time. So I understand the concern that fans have, because they're the third longest playoff drought in the NFL right now. But I think this will look better, obviously, by the time the season starts, or better by the end of April after the draft for sure.
Well, I got to start off, first of all, by giving a shout out to the good folks of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. I spoke there last week, and interestingly enough, talking about my Notre Dame career and my NFL career, and somebody stands up and wants to know how the signing of Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce will impact the Colts. So you might have a few Colts fans in Wilkes-Barre, but it was a great time, and I just wanted to give them a shout out for just being great hosts to me. But having said all that, I think better or worse really depends on the quarterback situation. In the NFL, you either have that guy or you don't have that guy. And the Colts seem to believe that they have that guy, albeit coming back from a broken leg and an Achilles. But he thinks that he'll be ready for game 1. The Colts act like they'll be ready for game 1. As long as that piece is there, then I can say that they're not as bad as they were last year, and they were pretty good last year for the most part. The other signings I know we'll get into later, but when I saw the signing of the basketball player from Notre Dame, I'm thinking to myself, maybe they're trying to convert to a 12 personnel type of team. I mean, they lose Pittman, and although there are some good receivers they can go out and get, once you get past like the second or third round, you're pretty much talking about a journeyman wide receiver. So on the offensive side, I mean, they can find a good lineman in the later rounds, but a standout receiver, I don't see anybody coming like in the 5th or 6th round that could help them solidify that complementary piece that Michael Pittman was. Defense, still concerned, but I see that they're adding a lot of depth. But, when you can pick up these guys in free agency, that sort of means that the teams that they were on didn't want them anymore. So it's not like you're picking up a game changer, although I'm sure some of the guys that the Colts picked up were cap casualties, like a Zaire Franklin, like a Michael Pittman. And so, my thoughts on the salary cap. I don't have to go through it again, but I can't see them as better or worse, but I tend to say they'll be better if they get the play that they desire from their quarterback.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I'll say before we throw it back to Derek here is I think a lot of people's opinions on this roster is just going to be so dependent on what you thought of the team at the end of the season, right? Like if you were big on Daniel Jones and thought Daniel Jones could be a franchise quarterback, locking him up and extending Alec Pierce. And then look, a lot of the guys they lost, I'm not going to say that they're bad players by any means, but I think at the point of their careers, or at least where they were with the Colts, they were fairly replacement level players. Like Michael Pittman Jr. had really hit a cliff the last couple of years and hasn't been what he was back in 2021. I think he was at the level where he was kind of like a replacement level guy for the Colts. Kwity Paye, a good run defender, could finish some sacks, but kind of like a replacement level starter. Nick Cross, good player, good young player, only 24 years old, but coverage left a lot to be desired. And I would say that, it's a loss, but it's not the craziest loss. Even Braden Smith, he's missed over 30% of his games the last 3 seasons. When he's played, he's been a good starting tackle in this league, but at some point you do have to get a little bit younger. So a lot of, I think, whatever your opinion is of the roster is more so whatever it was by the end of the year. Like if you thought this team was a paper tiger that was just going to be a complete mess with or without Daniel Jones and just wasn't going to be a good team, then I think a lot of that same opinion carries over. But if you believed in Daniel Jones early in the season, you believed in like Alec Pierce's breakout season, locking those guys up, I think was probably the better options. And they still have plenty of time to bring in other replacement level guys. The Colts definitely did not get significantly better by any means. I don't think there's many avenues for that this offseason. But I don't think that they lost so much that they can't replace. They're going to get more guys in here. It's only the second week of free agency. I think they'll be able to bring in more guys still that can be on par with what they had last year. It just depends on how much you believed in the early season success with Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce, and what they were doing on offense, and if they can get a little bit more health and luck on defense going forward. So I'm not going to say this is like an A+ offseason by any means, but in terms of like how much worse did they get? I mean, getting their quarterback back and their wide receiver 1 back, I think it's still it brings the level up a little bit more than what I think it looks like currently with like the linebacker room that will be different by the start of the season.
And I'll say one more thing in regards to the defense. I mean, is it going to be more of a scheme thing with Anarumo, or do they need a superstar stud linebacker in there? I tend to think it's going to be more a scheme, and the head man is just going to tell Anarumo, hey, build as good a defense as you can. And if it's going to be scheme, then I see them having more of a dependency on veterans, guys that can come in and catch on to a scheme right away, as opposed to, loading up the team with a lot of younger players. I know they had talked about getting younger and faster, and there's an opportunity to do that at certain positions. But if you're going to be undermanned anyway, then you might as well have some veterans in there that have the sense of how to play professional football and get them to, master that scheme that Anarumo has, which takes, I think, less dependency off of the linebacker play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they need a star level linebacker, but what they do need is NFL caliber linebackers.
Yes,
and
there you go.
I'm not sure they have any of those right now on the roster. And to Zach's point, there's still a lot of time. And the 2 biggest priorities were get Jones and Pierce back. And they did that. They checked that box. That was the 2 biggest priorities. But I think the fear is that you lose Michael Pittman Jr., and even if he's a replacement level player, you haven't replaced him. Right. And you lose Zaire Franklin, and even though he's a replacement level, you haven't replaced him. And you lose Kwity Paye, and even though, you haven't replaced him. Right. And I think that's it. I think Wanye Thomas can be the replacement for Nick Cross, or at least add some safety depth there. They already have, obviously, Braden Smith, they think, replacement in Jalen Travis, right? But some of those other positions, you have to replace that production, even if it's middling production. And so far in free agency, a lot of the names are off the board. And I think that's why fans are getting a little panicky for a team that has 2 top 100 draft picks to replace those guys.
Yeah, totally fair to be panicky. Look, again, they have the 3rd longest playoff drought in the NFL right now. They have not had a lot of success under this general manager. I completely understand anyone freaking out about this. For me, though, it's just, let's just see how this all plays out by the time the draft comes along. Let's see what the roster looks like then. If they completely sit on their hands and do absolutely nothing, they don't swing a trade for one of these edge rushers on the market, they don't sign one of these veteran linebackers with connections, and in terms of Bobby Okereke, Akeem Davis-Gaither, or Jermaine Pratt back to the roster, if they don't do any of that kind of stuff, then I will join the bandwagon of being a little annoyed with how this is all going. But again, we're in 2nd week of free agency. While the names have thinned out quite a bit, there are still some guys out there that make sense that can raise the floor at some of these positions. So I want to see how it all plays out. I do agree that there is cause for concern because again, Chris Ballard hasn't given the benefit of the doubt to people here. He hasn't earned that, but I'm just going to see how it plays out first before fully going on board with like the Colts being much worse. There's still time. There's still opportunity to get better, even if it's slimmer opportunity now. But I want to see how this plays out before going too crazy with it all.
We talked about one of the positions where the alarm bells are ringing. In fact, I think I can hear Jake Arthur screaming into the void about it right now. He's been screaming about this position all year. What else do the Colts need to do? And what other areas do they need to address as free agency continues? We'll talk about that next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. And here's a stat that says it all. In the 1 minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing those candidates. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show, Locked On Colts, by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And we're back on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for being here alongside Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, former NFLer Alan Pinkett. I'm Derek Schultz. So we're talking more about the Colts and trying not to hit the panic button, which is, hard to do, right? It's March, and we're kind of in the portion of the Colts offseason where it's just kind of more fun to be on edge, and you forget that there's still 5 months until even the preseason begins and 3 months until minicamp and all of that. So the roster build is still very much in progress. But your colleague Zach Jake had an article today about the position groups that are of the most need. And I think we just kind of talked about linebacker, right? But that's the most obvious one. That's the most glaring one. Everybody knows that they're going to do something there. And probably some things, right? Plural there, whether it be the draft or you bring back Jermaine Pratt, you have a veteran free agent, whatever you end up doing there at linebacker, they are going to address that somehow. But outside of that, what are some other areas that you still think are pressing needs for this roster at this moment?
Man, there are a lot of needs in terms of not just starter needs, but also just key depth pieces needs. I mean, you've already mentioned linebacker that as of right now, they need to add 3, maybe 4 linebackers to this team. And I say that for a team that probably will only roster like 4 or 5 linebackers in general. I don't know if there's anybody currently in that linebacker room that says, oh, this guy's absolutely going to make the team next season. Like your top guys are Jalen Carlies and Austin Ajike. I think they kind of like Ajike. Carlies, I don't think they like very much anymore in terms of they being Lou Anarumo and his defensive staff. So I think like starters and depth at linebacker. When it comes to defensive end, we're still looking for that starting defensive end on the line. Like maybe that's JT Tuimoloau, but he didn't give us anything last season to say that should be the case. And that's just on defense right there. We go to offense, and I still think this offensive line depth needs a lot more help. We look at O-line and we factor in Jalen Travis being a starter. In terms of backups that they have across the line, though, with Danny Pinter leaving, with Luke Tenuta not being tenured, and I'm not saying that Luke Tenuta was the savior by any means, but their only backup offensive linemen with experience in the NFL are Blake Freeland, who missed all of last season with an injury and was not good anytime he played, Dalton Tucker, who I was his biggest fan as an undrafted free agent, but I've lost faith in him in the last couple of years, and also Josh Sills, who has been a very, very sparse player in the NFL. They don't have reliable depth. They don't even have like intriguing depth on the O-line. And then also we've talked about wide receiver as well. We could say Michael Pittman Jr. is a replacement level player, like you mentioned in the first segment there, Derek, but you still got to have that replacement. We're the biggest fans on this show of Ashton Dulin, right? We love Ashton Dulin to death, but he has never shown that he can be like a full-time wide receiver. Every time he's gotten that chance on offense, it's led to an injury that's missed time. He hasn't been a full-time guy that can handle that load as of right now. Maybe you can get him a little bit more snaps on offense, but I still think adding another player in there makes a ton of sense. And here's why I think that free agency is still going to be part of the equation for the Colts, right? All those needs I just mentioned, they can't fill that with the 7 draft picks they have. And they have over $30 million in cap space. The Colts have always used all their cap space every offseason. We can always complain about, Chris Ballard being this cheapskate and being bargain bin Ballard and all that. But most seasons, he uses all of his cap space. He's going to use that cap space one way or another. And with all of the stuff with all the needs they have, they're going to bring in more guys, whether it is post-draft, whether it's a trade, whether it's just 100 more bargain bin guys to fill out that cap space. They could certainly do all of that. So, I do think that they're going to fill out this roster because they feasibly can't fill out all of these needs with just the 7 draft picks they have, especially with only the 2 top 100 draft picks they have. So a lot of needs on this roster that we could even go more into detail about if we want to, but they're going to have to fill some of these in free agency before the draft for sure.
I don't really have much more to add to that. I mean, that was about as thorough as you could be in terms of what they need to add. I think the one that sticks out to me is you lose Michael Pittman. Let's not take that position for granted and think, oh, there's just another good 6'4", sure-handed receiver that's out there. That's going to be hard to find. So they may have to use some of that cap space to find a proven wide receiver, because I don't know about bringing a rookie in at that spot who's going to be able to, right off the bat, be able to identify coverages. He learned to do little things Michael Pittman did, which was sit down in a zone where his route was supposed to keep him running, but he knew if he kept on running, he would get knocked out. So, there's, to me, that's the one that kind of sticks out. And I do like you need to have more line depth. I mean, I think the only superhuman football player I've ever seen is Quentin Nelson. I mean, that dude is so bad. He doesn't even, on the depth chart, they don't even have anybody behind him. He's so good, but getting up in age, you always want to have good depth. And then, I would love to see, I don't know if they necessarily need it, but can they diversify at the running back position just a little bit? Because I know Jonathan Taylor can do everything. I mean, he is an every down back, but I sure would love to see just a change of pace, like Derrick Henry type, big hoss that can come in and maybe give Jonathan Taylor a little break, but get you your tough yards. Even though this is an offense that is on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, they're going to throw the ball. But every now and then to mix it up, to have that heavy back, or maybe even put 2 backs in the backfield, have that back be a lead blocker. But I guess that's why you have so many tight ends on the roster. And I mean, I focus on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, we're all aware of the problems that they have. And I think that just looking at how they're going about it, re-signing Jermaine Pratt makes all the sense in the world. As a NFL level linebacker that knows the Anarumo system. And look, they went and got another Cincinnati Bengal. Do the Bengals have any other linebackers they plan on getting rid of? Because they can just come right up. What is that? I-75? What is that? No, it's the east to
74.
West. It'd be an
74.
even number. Yeah.
Yep.
Just come right up I-74 to Indy.
Yeah, no, I love your point about the backup running back there, Alan, because I completely agree. I would love to go get just another backup running back and have that player compete with DJ Giddens for the second guy in line, right? In training camp, have 2 young guys compete. That's the dream scenario, right? But like you have to earn the right to draft a running back, right? By building up the rest of this roster. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the draft is when people say never draft for need, always draft best player available. It's never like that in the NFL. It's always a combination of the two. They're drafting for need, but also best player available at a position that you feasibly need, right? Like if you have Pat Mahomes, you're not taking the best player available if the best player available is a quarterback at number 9 or whatever, right? Because you have Pat Mahomes. So it's always this melding of those two ideas of best player available and need. And when you're looking at running back, like a backup running back, it's just not going to fit that mold when you have so many needs at linebacker, so many needs at edge, so many needs at wide receiver, offensive line. A backup quarterback might be in play depending on how they feel about Riley Leonard. Still maybe need a strong safety if they don't view Wanye Thomas as highly as I do, or Jonathan Owens as a capable player. So there are still so many needs on this roster that I don't know if they can go out and get a backup running back in this draft as of right now. But if they're able to still take care of some of these needs, get a Bobby Okereke in here, somehow swing a trade for one of these edge rushers, get like a Zay Jones or a veteran wide receiver in here just to be a good floor raiser when it comes to that. I think that then you could open the avenue for, hey, we can draft linemen, we can draft a backup running back now. But as of right now, at the moment, they've kind of pigeonholed themselves into the situation where we have to draft 2 to 3 linebackers in this draft because we don't have anybody else on the roster. But again, that could all change by the time the draft starts. And that's why it's the ultimate waiting game when it comes to the offseason.
But one of the things I'll add is the most plentiful position in the draft this year might be at linebacker. There's a bunch of good linebackers. And so I don't know if there will be a run on the linebackers. I don't anticipate a run on linebackers in the first round. There may be a couple that'll go in the first round, but it's just like the linebacker position has become sort of equivalent to the running back position, where you just don't get a bunch of them in the first round anymore. 100 years ago when I played, there might be 6 or 7 running backs that would go in the first round, but not anymore because the thought is you can get a good running back in the 5th round, which I don't necessarily believe. But I think that position sort of priced itself out of the market. So I think I wouldn't call it collusion, but I think the league has just devalued that position to where it's like, we ain't paying a running back that much money anymore because they get hurt. And, a top end back is only going to last 6 years max, so we'll devalue it, but it'll be interesting to see.
Well, and part of this too, guys, is just the fact that, you don't have you do in Jalen Travis, right? But for the most part, you don't have young players that are just obvious candidates to step in for these guys. You traded AD Mitchell, right? In the Sauce Gardner deal. So he's gone. You don't have a pass rusher because you've swung and missed at that position so often. I mean, I would love to say it was JT Tuimoloau with any sort of confidence at all, but I don't think you could say that right now with him entering year 2. And then what we've seen sometimes from Ballard for, some of the good things, and I do want to say we've been complimentary when he's deserved compliments before in the show. Sometimes he just kind of forces his will with young players. He says, we're just going to roll with these guys. And the ultimate example is the cornerback room from a couple of years ago when I think the first depth chart, it was like Darryl Baker Jr. and Dallas Flowers. And you're like, no. Like the kick returner cannot play cornerback for this team. And they rolled it out there and it was the disaster that you would expect it to be. And I'm just worried, Zach, about history, sort of repeating itself there. I mean, obviously they're going to add some bodies at linebacker, and obviously they're going to add and make some more tweaks here and there. But I just worry about that stubbornness, if you will, kind of rearing its ugly head again and sort of banging this table and saying, we believe in our young guys. So this guy's going to step up, even though he's got this infinitesimal chance of actually stepping up and fulfilling that role.
Yeah, the one point I actually really want to highlight that you made there, Derek, which I thought is just a great summary of how the last couple of years have been with the Colts, is you just can't miss on your draft classes, Like you can't afford to miss on draft classes in the NFL. It's the best way to have cheap talent that can step up when you have to pay your wide receiver one almost $30 million, when you have to pay a quarterback, when you're paying your star running back to keep them, when you're paying half your offensive line to keep them. You have to have cheap talent developing through your system and have those guys ready to play when a Braden Smith leaves, when a Nick Cross leaves, when Zaire Franklin gets traded, right? You have to have that developmental program working. And when you miss on linebackers, when you miss on safeties, when you miss on wide receivers like A.D. Mitchell, when you miss on all your edge rushers that you take, you're left just kind of scrambling, right? Where it's like, oh, we're going to solve it in this upcoming draft, or we're going to solve it with free agents. When free agents, as Alan said, are typically guys that aren't wanted by their team anymore or outprice themselves. So they're going to be pricey for you. So you get yourself in really bad situations with bad draft classes. And if we look at like their 2023 draft, their 2024 draft, it's a lot of misses. It's a lot of high profile misses for the Colts. And that's how you get in these situations where, like, outside of O-line, because Tony Sparano Jr. can make anything work there on the offensive line, outside of that, they haven't had many of these draft picks ready to go, right? Like Jalen Carlisle is supposed to be the next guy up at linebacker. He's not ready to go. At safety, like, there really wasn't a plan there behind Nick Cross. At wide receiver, A.D. Mitchell was traded away when he was supposed to be one of those next guys up. So you have to hit on your draft classes if you're going to make these choices and let guys walk, or you're left scrambling and grabbing, albeit these are guys I find interesting, like your Wanye Thomases and Kobe Woodens, but then your Arden Keys and your Michael Clemens to come in and fill bigger roles than what they can probably do. So you just can't miss on draft classes in the NFL. This is how all GMs, whether you're good or bad, if you have 1 to 3 draft classes in a row that are just not great and not filling out your roster and not giving you some talent, this is what happens to your team. The depth falls out the bottom. And you're not able to replace players when they leave. So we'll see how he navigates this. But that 2023 draft in particular, plus the 2024 draft, that's like 20 picks with like, 7 of those guys still on the roster, maybe 3 of them being like capable players, 4 of them being capable players, and almost all of those guys being on the O-line because, again, Tony Sparano Jr. can make anything work. This is what happens to your team when you miss on draft classes.
What does the Justin Fields trade mean for Anthony Richardson, and has a new team emerged in that sweepstakes? We'll talk about that next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you could put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Events contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. We're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Alan Pinkett is here. Zach Hicks is here. My name's Derek Schultz. Alan is the only one of the 3 of us that has formerly played in the NFL, although Zach had a fruitful JV high school football career, and we're talking Colts. We're halfway through this
freshman football. Freshman football.
I knew it wasn't varsity. So we saw a quarterback trade earlier this week, and we've had discussions on this show in the past, certainly after the first report came out that Anthony Richardson would be, and the Colts would be seeking a trade partner for him, whatever that was a month ago, and talking about what the market could dictate. I think we talked about, a 5th round pick, something like that. Justin Fields got moved from the Jets to the Chiefs for a 6th round pick. Now Fields has some less tread on the tires, if you will, has played more extensively, but maybe you can look at that in a good way for him, and that he's probably put more on film than what Anthony Richardson has in his sporadic play over his 3 NFL seasons. But also our friend Stephen Holder from ESPN reported that the Green Bay Packers, Alan, as you had mentioned, have emerged as potentially a candidate. But Zach, I just wanted to start with how you feel about playing out the Anthony Richardson trade scenario just in general, because I saw on social media some folks were going back and forth on this, some saying, there's no point in trading him right now. You might as well wait, and maybe you can get a panicky quarterback buyer later in the offseason, while other people are saying, look, it's done, it's over, like, get him out of here, let's move on. It's the best thing for him too. What say you as far as what the Colts approach should be here with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does make sense to hold him a little bit here. And honestly, they might benefit from holding him. I think he has a roster bonus due in, I want to say in July. That's $5 million. So if the Colts actually hold him and eat that and make it more appealing for an acquiring team to basically pay him nothing when they get him, because that's kind of part of it right now, is the Colts are on the hook for $5 million of him regardless, right? But if a team were to acquire him right now, they would have to pay that $5 million roster bonus, and that's what they would be owed. But if the Colts eat that after July, and again, you get into this scenario where teams are a little bit more desperate, they're seeing how some of their like 6th-round rookies look in camp. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy's not making our team. Let's get somebody else in here. Let's trade for Richardson to get him as a backup, or a quarterback goes down with an injury and you want to get Richardson in there. So it could make sense to holding him until then. I understand just wanting to wash your hands of it and just start fresh with the Daniel Jones era and let that go. But business-wise, it probably does make some sense to hold him and potentially eat that bonus there so you can maybe get a little bit more in the trade. So I get both sides of it. I understand why some people just want to move on right now, but you do kind of have to maximize your value where you can in the NFL. That's part of like the comp pick formula, right? Everyone wants to get off your hands and go sign some players. Who cares about a 4th-round pick? But again, draft picks and draft classes are how you build up the depth of your roster and raise the floor of your roster and keep your roster healthy long term. So if you want this Colts team to get back to anywhere positive, you want to keep maximizing the draft value and draft picks that you can get. So maybe holding a Richardson until July, eating that roster bonus, and finding a desperate team could get you a better pick in the long term. And whether the next GM is Ballard still or somebody else, it could help with the building in the future. So I think long term, this is probably better. But, I could understand just wanting to rid your hands of it as well.
Well, I mean, I said in the beginning of the show, Anthony Richardson, a Packer, is because that's what the speculation is out there. And it is speculation in regards to get rid of him now or hold on to him. I'm sure all parties would like to. I'm sure Anthony would like to get in the spot where he could play and then the Colts not have to worry about him. But that $5 million that you talked about is key. It may be one of those situations where the Colts do have to eat that because let's face it, Anthony Richardson is not going to challenge any quarterback of any team that he goes to. Right now, he's still looked upon as a project, or somebody that can be an adequate backup. He's not going to challenge for the starting position. If that was the case, then I think you would have seen a lot more activity in the trade market, but you look at Green Bay's situation, they lost Malik Willis. It's like, oh, damn. Okay, what do we do? And what style of player do we need? I also saw Detroit in there as a potential team that he could go to. But, both of those teams, Green Bay and Detroit, have solid number one starting quarterbacks. So they're looking for an emergency player. Yeah, and an emergency player, you're not willing to give away a high draft pick. So I agree with you, Zach, in that it's going to have to probably be a team that's panicking because, what they did in April and May and June didn't pan out. And now they need somebody with some good resources that can at least be competent and take some snaps, and you might have to lose to $5 million. But the teams know you want to get rid of them, so they're not willing to pay that $5 million either. They know you want to get rid of them, so they're going to wait too. But I think once you get into training camp, and I don't know if I would like to see Anthony Richardson be in training camp when he knows he's going to be gone at some point, but you may have to do that in order to wait for someone that's going to get hurt, because it always happens. Somebody's going to get hurt in training camp. And then there's going to be a greater need for him. And then that's when you can strike.
Yeah, I will also say that we could be waiting for the draft to happen, because when it comes to this NFL draft, there's one for sure starting quarterback, and then who's going to go number 1 overall, the Indiana quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, and then maybe Ty Simpson. I think that there are some teams that like him.
Somebody's going to reach for him, right?
Right. But after that, you can't even reach for a quarterback in this class, right? Like you're reaching for Ty Simpson because he had a good 8 games as Alabama's quarterback to start the season, right? That's why you're reaching for him. You can't even make that excuse for any of these other quarterbacks in this class, right? Who's QB3? No. Nussmeier from LSU, who was just dreadful and hurt all season, right? And we're looking around the league right now, and how many teams just either need a starting quarterback or need competition at quarterback, right? Arizona, obviously the Raiders when they're going to take Mendoza, Cleveland, the Jets could be in the market still for a quarterback because I know that they've made some moves here, but they could still be in the market. Pittsburgh currently doesn't have a quarterback. Again, they're getting held hostage by Rodgers yet again. So all those teams could be like waiting for the draft. And it's like, okay, maybe we could be the Ty Simpson spot. And then if they don't get Ty Simpson and they don't fall in love with any of these other quarterbacks on day 2 or day 3, then it could be on day 3 when day 3 happens. Let's flip a day 3 pick for Anthony Richardson and get him in here to be our young quarterback to work with. So, I could totally see the Colts just waiting for one of those teams to get desperate because they missed out on Simpson, the 6 foot, 190-pound guy who couldn't stay healthy at Alabama, and saying, hey, let's go get Richardson instead. So I think that could be another play for the Colts here.
And it just goes to show how important that quarterback position is. It's the one position that busts more than any other position when you draft him early. But when you don't have that guy, your team sucks. So there's such a premium on having good play from your quarterback. And I mean, I wish Anthony well. Last year when I first joined this particular broadcast, I thought no way Daniel Jones was going to beat him out. And I guess I admired more of his athleticism, thinking that was going to be the key to him playing. But when you don't pick up the blitz, then you know what? You're not going to be of much use to your offense. And so I think he's still young, has quite a bit of a learning curve. But Anthony Richardson is sort of like most of the quarterbacks in the league that don't make the playoffs. It's still a question mark, so if Daniel Jones can come back and be what he was, then everybody's going to breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, and I'm fine waiting. I think, Zach, you had mentioned it after the draft. Alan, you had talked about the potential of like opening up training camp. I don't want to wait that long. I wouldn't want to wait. And what are we really talking about here, guys? We're talking about slow playing this so you get a 5 instead of a 6. At the end of the day, so what? I do think that Ballard, because we saw this happen with the Michael Pittman Jr. trade where he probably took less value because he wanted to put him in a good situation. I do think that the Colts will, again, look for a good situation where Richardson, even though it doesn't sound like that has been the best relationship on both sides. But I just think that's kind of how they operate. That's their standard operating procedure, right? I'll give the Colts credit for that and Chris Ballard credit for that. But I'm hoping this doesn't take too long because, we're all guys here. Like once you break up with the girl, like you can't be crashing at her place anymore and she can't be crashing at her place. You know what I mean? Like it's over. Like, you go back to your place. She goes back to her place. And I think that's sort of where the Colts are right now with this Anthony Richardson situation.
Yeah. Can I also kind of complain about the Michael Pittman Jr. thing while we have it? And look, I get it. He's given you good ball throughout his career, right? It's a business. Like I understand you want to send him to a place that he wants to go. But in this wide receiver market, right, Jalen Waddle got moved for a first plus. DJ Moore, who's almost 30, got moved for the equivalence of a 3rd-round pick. to only get 10 spots moved up for Michael Pittman Jr. when the Steelers immediately extended him afterwards, right? So this isn't just a rental, right? You're dumping his money to a team that wanted him. You couldn't get just a straight up pick for him. Like, come on. Like, I understand that you let him, and it became like a only one spot situation because you wanted to send him to Pittsburgh. But it's a business at the end of the day, right? I understand you want to do right by your guys, but you also have to make your team better. And I know we're just talking about an extra dart throw here in the draft, but those extra dart throws can turn into legitimate players for your team. And to not even get, like, again, if you would have traded him straight up for a sixth, whatever, like, that's better than what they moved up 10 spots. I mean, it was a cap dump spot. You didn't get an extra dart throw. You got a slightly improved dart throw in the end of the draft. Like, to not get, like, I don't know, to me, it's a business at the end of the day. I understand, like, have him give you a list of 3 teams that he wants to go to, because you still have to do something right for your business, you know? So if they do that with Richardson too, like, at least with Pittman, like, he had given you a long time of very good play. With Richardson, like, why would you even do that with Richardson, right? Maximize the value as much as possible and do what's good for your team. You know, I understand sentimentality with this, and I don't want to be as robotic as, like, everything is only a business, but it is a business at the end of the day. You do have to do what's best for your team. And only in this wide receiver trade market, only getting a cap dump for Michael Pittman Jr., who was immediately extended at $20 million per year right afterwards, you couldn't get like a 6 straight up for him. Like, to me, that's just bad business.
I will say this. It's kind of refreshing,
right?
Because as a player, you realize you're just an asset. You know, you're a cog in the wheel, and you truly understand the business side of being in the NFL. But it's a teeny bit refreshing to see that, you know, Chris Ballard will try to do right by Michael Pittman, to appreciate the service that he's given him and put him in a good situation. Because I tell you, most of the time, they don't give a damn where they trade you to, as long as they can get good value back for you. And most players are aware of that. In fact, a lot of players, it's hard for them to, you know, develop a relationship with other players on the team because they know their ass is going to be gone in a couple of weeks. You know, guys don't really try to create friendships with a lot of the young guys, especially during training camp, because half those people are going to be gone. So it's like, I'm not going to waste time trying to be friends with this dude when he's going to be gone. I'm not going to invest that much, you know, capital and time into that, you know, because it's a business and you can be cut at any time.
Well, yeah. Ballard's approach maybe works a little bit more too when you have the most job security in all of professional American sports.
Right.
You can operate that way.
Yeah, no, real quick. I mean, it's refreshing, but there's a reason why we don't see it very often, right? Because guys who operate that way aren't the best at running the business. So it's refreshing. It's nice to see. It's just bad for business, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Today, the Colts inked a Lou Anarumo alum and are apparently attempting to shake down the thunder from the sky. We're going to talk about it next when the Colts Squad show wraps up. We're back for a final time here on the Locked On Colts Squad show. Alan Pinkett, Zach Hicks, and Derek Schultz. I was going to sing the fight song for you, Alan, but nobody wants to hear me sing on this show as as the Colts made a couple of Notre Dame signings. But really, I think the big news today, because, you know, no offense to Jerry Tillery, he's a vet. He's actually a former teammate of Quentin Nelson's from the mid-teens in the 2000s. He'll have to fight for a spot on the team. And so obviously will Carson Tout. I mean, that's the flyer of all flyers. You're talking about a guy who's never played football before, who's a converted basketball player. But I did want to start, Zach, an intriguing move, I think. I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt, a lot of Colts fans didn't have to, you know, look up his Football Reference page. Like, people know that name. 40 career starts, 47 games. Played on Lou Anarumo's defense for his first 3 seasons and is only 26 years old. You did talk about on social media, took a bit of a step back last year, but for a crowded cornerback room, I think that was an interesting move today for the Colts.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile shot. I can't imagine that this is going to come in much more than the vet minimum, because he did have that rough year last year. He's coming off Liz Frank injury, and I'm assuming he's only really signing with the Colts because there just wasn't much interest around the league for him. So in his mind, hey, let me get back with this coach who helped me have 3 good years to start my career before it all went wrong this last year. So very much a buy low candidate, only 26 years old, has had a season. I think he had 3 interceptions a couple seasons ago, 4 interceptions a couple years ago. So he's got the ball production, he's got the speed, he's got the size that the Colts look for. And for a team that was rolling out the corpse of Xavier Howard at points last year and a bunch of practice squad guys, it never hurts to add more depth. And I know that a lot of this show and a lot of the comments have been piling on Chris Ballard, and I think there's reason for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend him. But I will say, when he said he wanted to get younger and faster in free agency, I always thought that was kind of goofy, because you can't get younger and faster in free agency. These guys are all almost 30 years old when they hit free agency, right? Especially with the COVID years, right? That happened. Yeah. A lot of the guys coming off the rookie contracts were COVID players. They're all like 25 years old. So they're all going to come into free agency like 29, 30 years old. It's hard to get younger and faster in free agency. But I think 3 additions are very intriguing additions, and that is Cam Taylor-Britt, Kobe Wooden, and Wanye Thomas. To find 3 players who are all in that like 24 to 26-year-old range, who have shown some pretty good football in flashes, and giving them a shot here in Indy to really build on what they have shown to other places. I'm very intrigued by those 3 players. And I think that those 3 players just add that younger and faster depth that the Colts are looking for. Are they answers to anything? Probably not. We'll see, though. But I do like those shots they took on those 3 players. We can criticize the rest of the offseason for sure if we want. But I do really like all 3 of those. And I think that these are worthwhile shots for the Colts, even if they're not perfect for the team by any means. So, I think Taylor-Britt falls into that same category with like a Wanye Thomas and with Kobe Wooden, where I'm excited to see what they can bring. And if they end up showing something good, you could have a player that's still in his mid-20s up until his age 30 season and have some pretty productive play for you.
Well, the thing I like about the Taylor-Britt signing is it's a 1-year deal, and you know how players are when it's a contract year. I mean, it's make or break, and they usually play their ass off when it's a contract year. The question I have, though, and Zach, you may be able to answer this because I can't keep up with all the players around the league, but can he play nickel? Did he play a little nickel? Because I envision, you got Sauce locking down one guy, you got Moody Ward locking down another guy. In a circumstance, a team has 3 good receivers. The ability for those 3 guys to play man-to-man, and then you can send 7 people after the quarterback. I think that's kind of what Lou Anarumo is envisioning. Yeah, that's what I think about in my head. If I can lock down at least 2 and maybe 3, I'd send the house. I don't need to have, a first-round linebacker. I just need a linebacker that can get to the quarterback. So that's it. That's my question. But I think it's a plus that it's a 1-year deal. He's betting on himself and, getting that opportunity. I've done 1-year contracts, and I mean, a 1-year contract makes you pay attention in the meeting room. It makes you make sure you get your butt in the weight room. It makes you study for that extra half hour, the playbook, because you got one shot. Yeah, it's sort of like the Eminem song.
The one shot. Yeah. You guys are all trying to sing on tonight's show. I see. I'm the only one who hasn't brought up some song reference. With Cam Taylor-Britt, I don't think that the signing is as significant in a sense where like he's going to get serious playing time as of right now. I think that he's more so brought in for depth at this point, which is very much needed considering two of the 3 guys ahead of him. I mean, heck, you could actually say all 3 guys, right? Because Sauce Gardner missed time last year with his injury, Mooney Ward with the constant concussions, and then if we assume Justin Wally's going to be over him, Wally missed all of last year with the torn ACL, right? So it's just more about adding another player to the room that, if healthy, like you have that depth back there. But in terms of playing nickel, he did play some nickel early on with the Bengals, more so as an outside corner the last couple years under Anarumo, but When we look at what Anarumo has done with the Colts, especially like last year, a lot of his third down stuff or passing down stuff, he'll put 4 corners on the field, right? So you have a nickel corner, and then you have like a big nickel corner too that is like in man coverage with a linebacker. That's where we saw Jonathan Edwards. That's where we saw some other guys in there as well. So we could see him in that kind of role. But I think for the most part, he's more so just insurance on the back end, in terms of, hey, if Mooney says he's good to go right now, but he also said if he gets one more concussion, that might be it for him. We don't want to be caught with our pants down in that situation where it's Justin Wally and Mekhi Blackman. So let's get Cam Taylor-Britt in here and see what he can do. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Colts. I don't think it's a significant signing by any means right now. But I think it's more significant than like these Chiefs defensive tackles they keep signing. Who look, I know Jerry Tillery comes from Notre Dame, guys, but he's not that Jerry Tillery anymore in the NFL. I'm more honestly of if we had to put the 3 weirdest signings in a bucket, the 2 Chiefs defensive tackles and the basketball playing tight end who's never played football before. I'm more intrigued by the basketball playing tight end than I am of those 2 defensive tackles making the team. That says how much I just want to burn the Kansas City Chiefs film from last year. There's only 1 defensive tackle from the Chiefs I would want on the Colts, and there's no chance they can get him because he's going to be a Hall of Famer here in a couple years. I don't want any other defensive tackle. So Chris, if you're listening to this, 2 is enough. I don't want a 3rd one. Please leave it at Tillery and Derek Nottie. I would rather just not look at that defense again.
I would say that he's bringing in players with a winning attitude, but that would be false when you look at the Chiefs' record last year.
Right.
But I mean, they do come in with a pedigree of professionalism and just that. They've been in a situation where they know everything's on the line and they know how important it is to win. And it's good to have a team of those folks that aren't going to quit when they get down in the 3rd quarter or middle of the 4th quarter. And that's one thing I can say about Kansas City is I don't think they ever quit last year. I think they got beat a lot, but I don't think they ever quit. So to have guys of that type of that mold that are in here that realizes a game is 60 minutes. I think that's the biggest thing you get from a guy from Kansas City, because there's a certain, professionalism you got to have to be in that organization. If that can rub off on the Colts, which they need something because 8-9 just ain't cutting it anymore.
Zach, maybe he's gone no matter what, but does the Cam Taylor-Britt situation, did that strike you as meaning anything for Jalen Jones?
I don't necessarily think it does as of right now. I think his footing is probably the same as what it was when the season ended, which was not great in terms of they clearly like some of these other guys in-house a little bit more. If anything, it probably just solidifies that a bit. But if he's still on the roster come training camp, he's going to have that opportunity to beat out these guys. Honestly, outside of Wally and the top 2 guys at outside corner, none of these guys are set in stone of making the team, right? So if you're a Jonathan Edwards, if you're a Taylor-Britt, if you're Mekhi Blackman, if you're Jalen Jones, have the best camp of your life and you're going to make the team, right? You have to earn your spot. So if they're still all on the roster come training camp, it just comes down to what you do in training camp and who outperforms other guys. Because we saw last year, Jonathan Edwards went from being kind of a nobody in camp to making the team outright over Juju Brents and Sam Womack and all these other guys because he played better than them in camp. So if he is still on the team come training camp, which I'm not fully convinced he will be, but if he is, it's just on him to have the camp of his life and go from there.
I just want to shout out Carson Tout because he took advantage of the COVID year and some red shirts to play 7 years of college basketball. Carson Tout was in the same high school class as Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I just want to underline that. Congratulations to Carson Tout for getting all those years out of Northern Arizona and then at Notre Dame as well, and now trying the Mo Alley Cox plan. Because you know what, football, as much as we kind of like talking shop and all of this, and Zach likes to get into the film, it is fun to have fun stories, right? It'd be fun to see this guy show out the way that Mo Alley Cox did and convert from basketball to football. So why the hell not? 6'8", 250, sure, let's give it a whirl.
You know what I would say is you thank Steph Curry for this, because he's changed basketball entirely, to where now, and the NFL has benefited from it, because if you 6'7", 6'8", and can't shoot the three, you might as well change sports, because you're not going to be playing basketball. So I think the NFL has benefited from getting these taller tight ends, which are bigger targets, which, let's face it, they have a propensity to know how to get open, because they had to do it on the basketball court. So, matching up against a 6'3", 6'2" linebacker, I mean, I'm sure they just licking their chops at that opportunity.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Anyone complaining about this, like, we will not see him. We'll probably never see him in a meaningful football game ever. But if we do, this is like 2, maybe 3 years down the line, guys. Like, this is the project of all projects. Mo Alley-Cox was on the practice squad for 1.5 years, I believe, with the Colts. He was waived multiple times before he became the forever Colt that he is right now. So this is just a major project. And honestly, Mo Alley-Cox is such an outlier for this archetype. Most of these guys just don't end up working. So anyone getting like upset about this, like, it's for like the league minimum, just to see if you have it. If you don't have it, then you don't make the team. It's not that big a deal. I know we want every free agent to be some superstar, but sometimes you take these shots in the dark, and occasionally you get a Mo Alley-Cox out of it. So it's a worthwhile shot, and it's no harm against you if it doesn't work out.
DSG Goodbar says bring in tout for tush pushes in the comments section. That's it.
Tyler Warren fumbled them last year, so maybe this could be the solution.
That's a good drop in there. Thanks so much for joining us on the latest edition of the Colts Squad Show. We'll be back with you Thursday night at 9:00. And as always, the Colts news cycle never ends, so keep it locked on Jake and Zach every day on Locked On Colts. Be sure to follow at Locked On Colts on socials and check out our other great content on YouTube and TikTok. And we'll see you next time right here on the Squad Show.